Hi again, everyone. Santa Steve back at you with tip number 3. And to get into that tip, I want to read from you a small excerpt from a really good book called Zen Guitar. I'm going to hold that right up there. And there you go. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I'm finished, but I want to read this to you. I think this is really cool. Even in the most trivial matters, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. A right way to walk on stage, a right way to play one note, a right way to accent one beat. This does not mean what's right for you is right for everyone else. It simply means you should pay attention to every detail and take care to do even the smallest things correctly. Be mindful of what you are doing. That's in the book Zen Guitar. The author is, I hope I pronounced this right, Philip Toshio Sudo. And of course this whole book is making a very wonderful philosophical connection between playing the guitar and the stages we go through as we play the guitar and the philosophy of Zen. And so that little section that I read to you relates very well to what it is I want to talk to you about today. And that is the whole area of listening. This is one detail you need to pay attention to when you're practicing, when you're playing, when you're recording, whatever activity you're doing musically. Listening, in some ways, in my experience, has almost taken a backdrop among guitarists. Until they start to record or until they start to perform. Then all of a sudden it snaps. Oh yeah, I need to be paying attention to how I sound. It sounds kind of obvious, but I'm always surprised how many players, students even, who don't really listen to what they're doing. I find a lot of guitarists just develop this immense preoccupation with technique. You know, how the fingers move, where I should be, how I should pick. And they're not really using their ears toward the nuances of what they could do. I want to give you an example. If you're, get my guitar out here. If you're basically a strumming player, a recreational guitarist perhaps, it doesn't matter. If you're a strumming player, if I grab a chord, that's a G, if I grab a chord and I'm reading the chart and I get all the fingers in the right place, and I'm in the right frets, and I'm ready to go, and I go. It sounds okay when you're doing this. And if you were doing that for me, I might then stop you and say, it sounds good, but let's, instead of strumming everything, let's go through what you're playing in the chord one string at a time. So keeping the chord the way you formed it, here's what's really happening. You hear that? Clearly, excuse me, when you strum a chord, it is entirely possible and very common that there are going to be notes clustered within the chord that are not coming through properly. And if you are in the habit of just making the shape and then going ahead and doing this, you may indeed miss that truth. So I'm always asking students, when you're learning new chords or when you're trying to refine chords that you're working on, not only is it sufficient and necessary to have the fingers all in place and reading the charts properly, but you've got to listen to each and every string in that chord. Sound a little out of tune. That it's all coming through clean and ringing beautifully. You don't want this. To an uninformed ear, you may look and sound okay. This looks good, The rhythm in the hand looks good, but the sound is actually not good. So that's one thing that I would ask you to pay a lot of attention to in order to raise your bar, get the playing level even higher. And if you're a rock and roll kind of person and you're dealing with the electric guitar, and specifically electric with lots of distortion on it, there's another beast that you have to listen to. I'll give you another example. Again, I'm going to come back to our old friend A minor pentatonic. This is comfortable for most of you. I'm going to play that two ways and take a listen to each way. Here's the first way. You hear all that stuff coming out of my amp? Most of that is just noise. It's string noise. It comes from the fact that I've lifted a finger from one string, see, and it's cumulative. When you have distortion on your guitar, that cumulative effect is very audible. And if you don't learn how to control it, or you're not aware that you're doing it, in other words, you aren't listening, then you could sound pretty sloppy. Whereas you want a good clean, you don't want, hear that little hum in the background. You need to be able to control the beast. In other words, the one note I want to hear is all I want to hear. I don't want to hear that? That's a result of one note being played and activating a whole bunch of other strings that are not being played, but they're also not being controlled. They're untamed. Listen to it again. With control, nice and clean. Without control, sorry, all that mess. So that's another facet, learning to listen. So on the acoustic, if you're doing a lot of chording, and here as well, listen for each and every note in the chord and make sure it's clean. And do what you need to do, attend to the detail, as Zen Guitar Book talks about, and make it better. With regards to electric guitar and heavy doses of grunge or distortion or fuzz, whatever you want to call it, you have that extra beast that has to be controlled. So built into your playing over time, not only do you need to fuss about where your fingers go and what your pick is doing, you need to develop built-in technique to control all of that extra string noise that is a part of playing. So it's all about listening. Okay, now I'm back on my acoustic, and I want to show you one final example. Again, we're just going to I'll use a major scale just for refreshing sound for a change. Here's a C major scale, hopefully played nicely. More commonly, I would hear things like, it's almost difficult to do it. Another feature that you have to pay attention to, another detail, is the fact that of the two hands that are playing, especially as you go quicker, it's probably quite true that the picking hand will move quicker than the fretting hand. In other words, it would activate a string or a note. It would certainly activate the string, sorry, but this hand still has to push the string down in order to form the note. And if you happen to pick anywhere from where this hand just touches the string and then is on its way down toward the fretboard, if you hit anywhere in there, you get the clicky sound until there's the note you need. So a lot of times, this hand sort of has to prepare the note first before this hand can pick. in a, slowed down sort of way of thinking. In practical playing, they are happening at the same time, but we have all of this available. I'm just barely touching the string. Click, 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 push, push, buzzy sound, push a little harder, cleans itself right up. So if your pick is hitting anywhere during the push, you're going to get the clicky thing. And that's a situation where the two hands are not synchronized properly yet. So as you're playing scales in particular, or melodies, you need to pay attention to that interaction and not let this hand sort of fly off and go out of control while this hand's trying to pick and keep up. We're looking for synchronization. Listen for those sounds and attend to that detail. Right? So is the idea. Not this I'm really exaggerating it there, I know that, but you really need to pay attention to it. So it's, in a sense, it's a very small thing, but it's everything. It's the way you're going to sound when you play. Hey, a great test of checking it out, record yourself once in a while. Take the leap. If you can do this straight on your computer or get some kind of recording system, and just play something. And then don't listen to it for a day or so. Come back and then listen. You may be quite surprised at usually how kind of bad it sounds. And that's an objective hearing because you took time to not listen to it right away. So, the tip for today is all about listening, and within that is attending to the detail of things. So when you're home and I can't watch you practicing, pay attention, not only to the placement of your fingers, but to the sound that you're producing. You don't want buzzy sounds, and you don't want thuddy sounds. If they're there, you can fix them. You need to get rid of them, and you need to cultivate your playing to the point that it's nice tone. Learn to listen. I'll see you at tip 4.